Now that we've discussed the Site Modeler project, let's create one. So in our Power Civil, we've opened up siteplan2d.dgn located in our Data Geosite Site Modeler Lab 1 folder. In the training guide, that's step 1 on page 1-2. So now we want to create a project. So we're going to launch the Modeler program. We can get that from the Civil pull down titled Modeler. Every time you enter the Modeler program, a project wizard will pop up. That project wizard is to help us create a new project or open an existing one. It is nice because it steps us through the necessary steps to get into a project, whether we don't have one or have one. You simply answer the question, in this case create new project, and you'll be presented with a next button or previous button. We'll click next in our case, and that'll let us know that we are going to create a new project, and that project has a name. So you can see in this case it's taken on the name of the DGN file, and it's simply added the GSF extension, siteplan2d.gsf. This is fine and actually a good practice because we'll be assigning elevation to these elements in this DGN file, and it's nice to know that this project file goes with this DGN file. We track the elements in the file, and we want to make sure that we're tracking the appropriate elements in the appropriate file. So it tells us the name. If we wanted to change it, we could at this point. I'll simply leave it as is and click next. Now we're at the model portion where we can create a model. This project is new, and so they just want us to have the ability to create a new model. Again, a model being a logical group of site objects. So at this point we don't have any objects or elements, but we can at least create a model and give it a name, and then later on we'll add things to it. In this case, tower is the name of my model. Being that this is an office tower that we're site, and we're going to be working on the grading of that area. But a model can be anything, any name you want. And a project can have multiple models in it. So that'll be the name of my model. Now next I'm going to look at the project preferences. So I'm going to hit Set Project Preferences, and that's going to bring up a dialog of all the preferences that are going to be associated with this project file. And of course this model is going to be part of that project file. Before I get into all the preferences, let's just simply go File, Open from the Site Preferences dialog, and in our Site Data Geosite Standards folder we have a bylevel.spf, which means that I've gone through the preferences, set them up the way that I want, and I've saved them off. So I did a file save and saved them off, and that way I can use them again and again on other projects. A lot of times these preferences should stay the same. The first set of preferences is the tolerances. That has to do with how we're going to create triangle points along every element that you assign elevation to. So along linear elements, we'll create triangle points every 10 feet. Curves, we'll create them basically where the triangle edge doesn't deviate from the curve more than a 100th. As we wrap around corners, for example the building corner, as we shoot off of the corner of the building to tie down to the ground, we'll make sure that our triangle points are no more than 5 feet apart where they tie down. B-spline and stroking and stuff like that, that helps us with our edit profile tool that we'll look at later. And the maximum triangle length for objects. These are basic DTM preferences. And since we are creating surfaces, they need these preferences for the triangulation of them. Project components, that points me to my DDB file. So later on I'll be accessing a DDB file that has items in the DDB, for example how to place a curb line how to place a top of curb line, how to place a back of curb line, how to place a sidewalk line. All that information is stored in the DDB, so later on I can access that and have it draw things appropriately for me. Visualization. How do I want to see things, view things on my model and objects? And I'm going to tell it that I want to see both the active model and the active object as I'm working. So I'll see two sets of graphics, kinda. This is also where I'd set up how to view the model under Model Visualization. And you can see in this case that I've set it up to view contours every 25 for the major and 5 for the minor. And I've set up a level, a weight, and color for the lines. I did that by simply double-clicking on the sample graphic and going through and setting it up. I'm not displaying triangles, but I could. I'm not labeling the contours, but I could. And these can all be changed at any point, at any time, and it will automatically update. On the objects, here I have a list of objects, types. By no means is this a final list. I could have other types if I want, and I can add things to this list. I can modify the list, and I can delete things from the list. But you can see, for example, that ground, if I create an object type of ground, it's going to take on the display below, 25 and 5. If I create a building object type, it's going to take on the display below, 5-foot major, 1-foot minor, red lines and white lines for the contours. Also, with each object type, there's slopes. Like I said, an object has side slopes. How do we merge it or tie down to the model? Those slopes can be presented to us in any form: run, rise, run, percent. In this case, I have 3-to-1 slopes to tie off of the edge of my building down to the ground surface or model surface around it. The same with parking lot and so forth. So each object type can have its own unique slopes, and of course object that can be changed at any time as well. So if I want 6-to-1 slopes on one building but 2-to-1 on another, I can do those kind of things. Updating, I'm going to auto update everything. If I happen to delete a site element or delete a graphic that is actually a site element, we'll let you know that, so that you can delete the site element as well. And element association is turned on, so when I do associate one element with another, they'll automatically update if the parent element changes. My save option, we don't save this GSF file automatically, so you have to do a file save when you want, or you can set up an automatic save and give us an interval to save it. So those are my project preferences at this point. We'll come back as we go and look at those in more detail. Now back at my project wizard, I'm going to go ahead and finish that and we'll move on. So I'm starting back at page 1-5, and I'm going to click the next button. That creates my project file, new project. That creates my model, tower. And at this point I can either click OK and I'll move it back into SiteModeler, or I can open up an object import wizard, just another wizard we provide to help you with the process of bringing some surface data from a TIN file or whatever into the project to get started. And in my case, I have a ground surface, some survey data. I want to bring that in to the project. So I would toggle that on. I'll click OK, and that'll close down the project wizard, and it'll bring up the import data wizard. The file type that I'm importing is a TIN surface or a TIN file. We included this file with the project data, so I'm going to click the Browse button, select my ground.tin in my Lab 1 folder, click OK, and that'll grab that file. So I click Next. So now I need to decide, inside the project file we have models, objects, and elements. So what type of object is this going to be? In my case, it's going to be a ground object. So ground, and I'll just take the default name of ground 1, but I could override that if I want. Click Next, and the last thing is, do I want to use this as the base for my model? And I do. The ground is the base, and I'll be modeling on top of that. So it will be the base. I'll click OK, and it'll bring it in. So it imports it in, and it displays it in my project preferences, which said my model surface should be displayed with contours only every 25 and 5 feet, and my object surface the same. So at this point I've created the project. I'm just going to simply go Modeler, Project, Save. And that way I've saved my data. Now next we'll get more into Modeler. We'll start with the building pad and grading that and looking at some other options within the Modeler program.